Abe said he would resign if he was proved to have had connections with a land sale. What do we know about this so far?
Well, I don't think that there is a very strong possibility that he will resign. But nonetheless, what we do know is that the land sale was one in which the property was supposed to be much more than what was given. And instead, it was only 15% of the value. And it's a knockdown price, it really is. And it's really concerned a lot of people in Japan about some kind of corruption. Now, this kind of finance corruption does occur quite a lot in every part of Asia. But what is really concerning a lot of people is that it's also tied into a school that has some ultra-nationalist leanings. And so one of the question marks that comes up is Abe or his wife being involved in this, especially given the fact that there was a donation, as you mentioned, that might have happened. There is a statement from Abe and his wife that they have not donated the money, but in this particular case, what we see is that the gentleman who is a principal, the former principal, basically said that he did receive that million yen. So there is a question mark about what that is.
Yeah, Christine Surak, in your opinion, what is the most crucial part of the scandal? A controversial land deal, different figures in contract documents for construction costs, Abe's supposed donation to the establishment, or his potential link with a school which runs a ultra right-wing curriculum?
All of those elements are really quite bad, but they all have different elements at stake in them. So it's only the part of the land, on the part of the land deal, that Abe has said that he would resign if he was found to have direct connections with that. There, it'll be difficult to prove because it was the Ministry of Finance that assessed the value of the land, which it usually doesn't. The discount was for cleaning up some contamination. That's also usually out of the Ministry of Finance's domain, but it'll be rather difficult to show those links to Abe. The internal documents within the school with these different projections of costs that the principals seem to be using to get different sorts of government funds, that looks very bad for the school, but Abe would not have been directly involved in that. In terms of a gift, it's in a way not surprising because all of these members involved are also members of the Nippon Kaigi, the Japan Association, which is an ultra right-wing nationalist group. And so I think it's also through those group involvements that one is not too terribly surprised to see these kinds of gifts flowing around. But the final point about the school and its own curriculum, for example, having the students memorize the imperial rescript on education, give Nazi salutes at the end of races, and some very disturbing outcomes, I think are morally very questionable, although it wouldn't, in and of itself, it wouldn't be enough to take Prime Minister Abe down from the Prime Minister position.
Mr. Shinagawa, on Thursday, the Japanese parliament,
Yes,
known as the Diet, will hear from the head of the establishment of the school by the name of Yasunori Kagoike to determine the truth of his claim that Abe donated money to the school. Now, the ruling coalition intends to show that Kagoike lied about the donation. Why would the school head lie about this donation?
That's a good question. What we hear is that supposedly the Prime Minister had donated, or his wife had donated, 1 million yen. That's not a large amount of money, but it is significant. And this is something that worries a lot of people because of the curriculum and the kind of rightist tendencies of this school. Now, what's also interesting is that the principal's wife was very much on record for sending out a letter and other kinds of materials that indicated a real prejudice against Chinese and Koreans. And that got many people ired about things. Now, one of the issues that is coming up in front of the Diet is whether there is truth to the allegations. And one thing that we have to be aware about is that the principal has resigned. He felt that it was good for the school that he do resign, but it does not clear up the situation right now. And there's a lot of question marks as to whether there is veracity or not. I personally do not have enough information to make one judgment versus another.
Sure,
in
we
my
have
opinion.
to, yeah, we have to listen to what is being said tomorrow. But Christine, let me come to you. Not only is the Prime Minister actually implicated here, but the educational establishment has also been linked with Japan's Defense Minister Tomomi Inada, who has been accused of providing legal advice to the school. Now, the Defense Minister first denied it, only to reverse that one day later. To what degree will the scandal impact Shinzo Abe's administration?
Well, it's not great for in terms of his own interests to have Inada implicated, because she's often been talked about behind closed doors as a possible handpicked follower for Abe. She's also a member of this ultra-nationalist or ultra-right-wing group, the Nippon Kaigi, and is also, fairly nationalistic in her own stance. So to have her involved in this as well, I don't think what she's been accused of is enough to take her from power either. But it doesn't look very good for her overall in potentially becoming the prime minister to follow Abe.
Mr. Shinagawa, the scandal has hit Shinzo Abe's support rate, with a NHK poll showing support for his government down by 7 points to just about 50% in March. Now, the latest survey by the Yomiuri Shimbun newspaper shows approval has dropped by 10% to 56%, and an online survey by Japan's Nikkei Business Daily found that his support fell to 36% from 63% in just a week. However, some Japanese media say no rival politician appears powerful enough to challenge him over the scandal. How do you look at Abe's political future at this moment?
Right. In my opinion, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is in a situation where he certainly is experiencing a lot of scandal or charges of scandal, but at the same time, there is no viable alternative candidate to replace him. He may be a Prime Minister that will be serving up to 9 years, which will be amazing and unprecedented in many ways after post-war Japan. And one of the reasons why is because in many ways Japan is going through a new kind of era in which there is the rise of China, and there's also the threat of North Korea. And as long as North Korea is becoming more imminent as a threat, there is going to be some tendencies among the Japanese to try to deal with that situation of a possible nuclear attack on Japan. And in that sense, the question mark is, where can we find a candidate in Japan that would be strong enough in terms of conveying to the public a united front to deal with this kind of situation? Big question mark. In this particular case, the defense minister is also one that has gone through some scandals, especially in South Sudan, but at the same time, I don't think that this is enough of an issue right now yet to sink either of the two.
Now, finally, let me come to you, Christine. In Japanese post-war history, there were precedents that top leaders or important members of the ruling party were forced to resign or even sentenced for involvement in corruption cases. What is the level of the Japanese people's tolerance towards state leaders' scandals in your eyes?
Well, in comparison to other cases, sometimes it's rather surprising the rather small figures that can be involved in these corruption cases. Sometimes they can be absolutely enormous, as in the 1980s with Kanemaru. But I think Japanese public more broadly kind of rolls its eyes in sighs and feels regret that its politicians have so often come down in corruption scandals, but also doesn't feel as though there's much they can do about it. In all of this, we have to remember that the number of people turning out to vote has been declining quite substantially. So Abe's been elected with a smaller proportion of the electorate supporting him than voting against him earlier in the 2000s, simply because so many people have gotten rather tired of the way politics has been running in Japan and are just not going to the polls because they don't see there's much point